So, hey everyone, this is Yash, and we are back now on the fifth episode of the UX show. I'm really excited to begin. I cannot just fathom to think that how many things we would be unraveling in this episode. So, yeah, with me, I have my co host, Victor Sanchez. He is a Google developer expert. I'm Yash. I'm your Google developer expert from Web and Maps. And I'm totally honored to be making sure that we can have this particular guest here. I just made sure that we had like of our talks, and we have Adam Argyle here on the fifth episode. Really honored for you to be here, Adam Argyle. How are you feeling right now?
Oh man, I got a little bit of a cold, but it's going to sound really good on the radio. You'd be like, "Ooh, he's so bassy and deep." But no, it's just I flew around the world and came home with a cold. But my spirits are high. I'm happy to be here. And what's up, y'all?
Loving
Amazing,
the
amazing.
energy, I have to say, Adam. Thank you so much for doing this with us. And yeah, first of all, maybe you want to give it kind of a quick introduction of who are you, what do you do, and then we know that we have a bunch of questions that we would love to, to start asking you.
Awesome. My name is Adam Argyle. I like to finish UI work. I like to study things deeply. I like to study the web platform and the capabilities. And I found myself over the years finding a love for CSS because a lot of other people didn't finish that. Well, I didn't think they finished it. They were like, it's done. I was like, what? You haven't done the fun part yet. Where's the animations? Where's the interactions? Where's the like little attentions to detail? Hey, that shadow could be a little bit better. Hey, you need some concentric border radiuses over here. We should probably fix that. And that attention to detail took me through two different schools. I went to computer science school. I also went to art school. And then I worked at agencies and startups and building apps since the first iPad. And I was a consultant, and I did so many different roles. And then I wound up at Google on the cloud design system team. From there, I transitioned to Chrome, and I worked on CSS for the past 6 years, where I helped CSS as a language evolve. I helped dev tools make sure that there was visual and meaningful tools for designers and developers for all these CSS features coming out. I love HTML, love CSS. I also love JavaScript. I just like making really nice things. And so give me the time, and that's what you're going to get out of me is UI, UX with attention to detail, focus on CSS. Ask me.
Awesome, awesome. That's some introduction, man. I love that, and I love that passion. And you are absolutely right, right? The definition of done with these things is always something quite impressive, right? What people consider done versus what someone like you consider done. And I have to say, I am a sinner in that category. So, hopefully we can learn a lot of you in these 25, 30 minutes that we have ahead of us. So that's amazing.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, there's just one thing that I do want to ask you, like what pulled you in this world of CSS and web UI? I believe that this is like totally something interesting, fascinating, but yeah, I would love to know like how did you start it?
Well, so like, how did I get started in CSS and UI?
Yeah, like what was the thing that made you like, yeah, this is the thing that I want to do for the rest of my life or something like that?
Yes, there was very much a clear moment, and this was in computer science when I was in college, and we were turning in our Java applications and our PHP and MySQL applications that we built. And so a lot of people, and I like database normalization. I think it's a fun, interesting problem. I like making Java apps that could do computations in a little applet in the command line. However, I was also playing Rock Band, and I was also playing, well, lots of video games and enjoying fun animations and learning Flash at the same time. It's like a fun thing for myself on the side. And I realized in the room of 30 different students or whatever, I was the only one that cared how it looked. I was the only one that my Java applet rendered the calculation and like did some amount of formatting. Like I had opinions about how it looked. By the PHP application, when I did a query and things came back, I had states, I had meaningful interactions there. I didn't just do the query and show the result and say, I'm done. And that's when I looked around the class, and also everyone else was understanding things a lot faster than me. I was like kind of slow to learn coding, but I was eager and I wanted to go a little further than they did. So anyway, I was like, I'm a little different than everyone else here. They seem to be really resonating with the computer science aspects of this, but not resonating with the design. I am resonating with design. I should just go lean into this a little bit. It seems I'm the weird one here that cares and has both sides of the brain trying to solve this problem. And so once my associate was done in database web scripting and all that, I went into art school. I got a bachelor in web design and interactive media, where I studied animation, motion graphics, typography, and very much the design side of everything. But as soon as I started that job at, that role at school, at the new school, I got a job at an application development agency where we were building iPad apps, web applications. And so I got to go be a developer, a front-end developer, and be in design school at the same time. And there were really nice designers I was working for. So I was constantly just like learning from the things I was implementing, learning from the things at school, and just had this cyclical loop of both sides of the brain solving these problems all day. And apparently it was weird that I did that. It's like, they're like, oh, you're a unicorn, you're whatever. And I was like, this stuff is cool. Like, I don't know, I just want to dig in wherever I want to dig in. Same thing with back in a database and DevOps and all sorts of other things I've gotten into. I'm like, this stuff's cool. I just want to get into it. But yeah, it was that moment in class when everyone else turned in their Java applets and mine actually looked good. And when I had this form submit and it came back and there's an animation that played, I was like, oh, I guess I'm different. I thought everyone would want to do this, but it's just me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think you are right. I mean, coming from engineering school, I remember that moment as well, at the very end, where so many nice designed and nice coded programs looked absolutely awful. And everyone knew that no one will run them again after getting graded, on that part. And it's kind of remarkable, but also kind of a disease that many engineering schools put on there, and is you are going to have users, and users are not going to use what you just made. It doesn't matter how technically complex and wonderful it is. I believe, given your introduction, I think this question is going to get obsolete almost instantaneously, but I'm going to make it anyway because I want your answer, and I want your punchback on this one. So I have seen, right, as CSS was gotten popular, we have seen an absolute, I would say, massive trend of frameworks and ways to avoid typing native CSS. So we have seen these frameworks absolutely explode, right? And everyone has their own framework, has their own religion, and their own way to do object-oriented CSS, and their own classes, and their own frameworks that they like, once more, just to avoid touching that native CSS. So my original question, and I wanted to trigger you on that one, is which framework do you recommend? Even though I suspect that I know very well which one are you going to tell us to do on that piece. But I wonder, right, if I'm someone starting, right, I'm someone finishing my studies, I now want to make my, probably not a Java applet anymore. We revealed our age by knowing what that is, probably, on those things, but probably they're going to do something different, right? But once that they get to that point, and for those that are going to care on how that project looks, what do you recommend if you are an absolute beginner, if you are a veteran, and is it a framework or is it something else?
Awesome. If you're an absolute beginner, the most exciting thing you can do is write a piece of JavaScript or just use CSS pseudo classes that respond to state change. So like flip a class, write a little bit of JavaScript that toggles a class on and off, and then go to vanilla CSS and figure out all the cool things that you can do with that. Because just that one little foot in the door can be so much fun. So that would be where I'd start as a beginner. Just some vanilla HTML, a little bit of JavaScript to make it so that when you click stuff, you toggle a class. I just think, anyway, it's a world of fun possibilities inside of there. After that, well, and also consider a radio group. A radio group is also really fun. It maintains all the state for you. It has keyboard interactions, and there's all sorts of cool things that you can transition with a radio group. So consider a radio group also. Then you don't even need JS. For choosing a framework, there are a whole bunch out there. A lot of them are trying to avoid global scope, I think. And maybe the long form of CSS is they don't want to write, but ultimately it's kind of funny. At the end of the day, after all of these years and all of these frameworks and all of these avoidances, they still all output CSS. They just output a smaller subset of what CSS can do. It's like they're hoping that by limiting it to this one little thing, maybe it'll be awesome, which also happened in JavaScript when you had like functional programming came out. And people were like, if we only use pure functions, maybe we'll have more resilient applications and we'll be able to move faster and build bigger things. Maybe if we had types in our TypeScript or in our JavaScript, we'd be able to move faster and move with more confidence. So it's like, but still TypeScript outputs JavaScript. As cool as Sass got, it outputs CSS. As cool as Tailwind is, it's just a portion of what CSS can do. And if you're looking for a framework that sort of gives you lots of good features right out of the box and puts you on a pretty healthy path, is Svelte. Svelte will change your selectors so that you don't have to work necessarily in the global scope. You get to write what feels very close to vanilla CSS or is vanilla CSS, and they'll do state changes and toggle changes for you pretty easy with a nice minimal syntax. So you can work in one single file, have a nice iterative loop inside of there, and get a lot of stuff done in a really healthy way. And so that one has a nice middle ground. It's not going too far into like solving problems. I'm doing this with quotation, solving problems in CSS. But it is giving you enough of a backbone that what you ship is only what you use. And you can just name things. Like I think a lot of people, here's a funny complaint. I'm going to whine right now. This one drives me nuts. People are like, I hate making CSS classes. They're like, and look, I get it. Making a CSS class can stink. You're like, what do I call this grid? Is it a block stack? Is it a X stack, a Y stack? You're like, naming these things is hard. And then what they do is they go off and they're like, oh, but I want to make a new file. And here's the name of my new JavaScript function. And here's the name of the database field that I want to. And I'm like, you just named 3 things without whining. Why are you whining about naming something
about the
in
CSS class? Yeah, that's
like, come on, you name stuff all day
for some reason. Yeah.
So anyway, there's some rants about frameworks and CSS in there.
No, but we got a lot out of that one. And yeah, it's funny, right? Because I think you are right on that, kind of limiting yourself to a subset of features as a way to learn something. It's probably not the best idea, right? Because you have to accept someone's decision on what that subset is, and that's not always very recommendable because they don't know what you want to create. And yeah, there are typical things, but of course it makes a difference. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. The trade-offs of abstractions. Yeah, someone else is making decisions for you, but you don't know what they were until you need to make that decision, and then you're like, oh crap, I'm stuck. But yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that there is one thing that I have also been very CSS obsessed for the last 5 years or so. I just really love writing native CSS. Like that's more of my jam than I do not want to use Tailwind all the time. That's not fun at all. So yeah, I want to ask you what's one CSS feature or something that is like a UI feature or some kind of animation that you have been obsessed a lot and would be something recent or could be something that has been all over the time in CSS.
Starting styles, it's scroll-driven animations, but starting style is so awesome. That's another one. You don't even need a CSS class being toggled from JavaScript to just be like, all right, my element is going to present itself when it's first painted on the page. Like, that's awesome. And so that one alone, you can go sprinkle that over your application all over the place. JavaScript, any framework, the components have no idea that they've been, introduced in an animation with starting style. So that one is really fun. And then combine that with the linear easing function for some nice, soft, slightly springy animations, and you got yourself a nice little set of ingredients for all sorts of meals you can cook up.
Amazing.
And without ever opening your JavaScript file. So that I love that.
Also something that Tailwind has been really hard to catch up on. So yeah, Tailwind would someday would be able to catch up, but till then we'll have more CSS and would be more interesting CSS stuff that would be it's really interesting for me. I would want to know that if you could just snap your fingers, have something that would be available all across every browser, could be something that's widely supported on. Can I use something like that? What would be that feature? What would be that particular CSS thing that you just really love?
Ooh, that one changes every week. I'm like, this week I really want this. I really want named container queries, not size container queries. I just want the named ones. They're already in the spec. There's already web platform tests, but it's not in every browser. But it unlocks a new generation of responsive design where it's not about the device size. It's not about mobile and desktop responsive design. This is about, where is my component in the application? Your applications get really complex. So is this particular element in the side nav? It needs to look different. Is it in the footer? It needs to look different. Is a button being used in the top nav bar? Maybe it gets a little bit of a different height. All of these contextual moments that a component usually it's told what to do from the outside in, right? An extrinsic force shows up. And so your component has styles scattered across your application to sort of tell it how to behave in this particular scenario. But with a container query about knowing what name of a container you're in, that component can own it all itself. which becomes really powerful as you want to go refactor, or you just want to get a grip on like all of the different variants and unique moments that this thing needs to live in. Container queries, which is, and then you're also like with the name container queries, you don't have to give it container type inline size, which means you don't have the side effects of like what happens when you do want a container that, and often those collapse on you. And that can be this like awkward trade-off is you're like, I want to write container queries, but my elements keep losing their width. And then you have to kind of restyle your layouts so that your layout has this external force on the container so that it's being told what size to be instead of deriving what size it needs to be. And so, yeah, you get in the weeds really fast, and the named container queries would get you out of a lot of these side effects and straight into this modern sort of sector-driven or area-driven component workflow where your component just is wildly magical feeling to everyone else on the team. So like, I put it in a sidebar and it just automatically looked awesome. Hey, I put it inside, I put this banner inside of the card and it automatically adapted to be like full width and fit the top. Like, this is cool stuff. So yeah, named container queries, I'm feeling very good about those, but we need some support. So I'm gonna snap my fingers and just have it.
That's amazing. That's amazing and absolutely true, right? I love that view on who decides how something looks, right? And that it's true that a lot of the times you are forcing yourself with that external force to make changes on how something looks, and it's kind of counterintuitive when you write it. So I like that view a lot. I never thought about it like it. Let's go a little bit in more depth, if you allow me. There are doing it, and sometimes there are overdoing it as well. So yeah, one thing where I have seen that quite a bit is in view transitions. So where do you think that view transitions actually improve the experience? Where do you think that you can actually go too far with them when you are using them, and maybe you should avoid them? How do you decide where do you put them when you are using them? I'm looking forward to this one as well.
Nice. I would say that one of the things of view transitions and why they kind of got built into the browser and some of their origins is object permanence. You know, when you're on a table and you have a piece of paper, and then you can push the piece of paper over here, and your eyes and your brain all gets to see that element go from one state to the other. Our web pages have not been doing that. If it was a desk, the piece of paper just magically appeared somewhere else on the table. So you didn't have this sense of object permanence. There was no connection to the elements, which then meant your brain had to like lose an element to regain it, almost like a peekaboo episode with when you as a kid, like, where'd the face go? Oh, there's the face again. But even that has more object permanence because, you know, you can see the hands move back and forth. So that's like, I think those are its best use cases, are when you're kind of persisting something and making things feel controlled and ambient in the space. You have things that feel like materials that move like things in the real world. You're just helping people think less. At least that's the goal. It's very similar to skeuomorphic design, where you're like, we don't want people to think about these things. We want them to just use them. So yeah, the web is sometimes called magic paper, and view transitions can very much give you a sense of magic paper or create many different types of materials of that. It can be overdone when you do things like full page transitions, like old school ones like you'd see on PowerPoint. Maybe the Batman transition, like from the 40s TV show. It's like, it's got this wildly spinning thing going across the page. Like, you can do it now. Should you? I don't think so. I think there's scenarios where that's just way too much. And yeah, maybe a long animation can also draw someone out because you're trying to continue this object permanence. But if it's really slow, animations can get in the way of someone trying to get something done. So there's always been this like prototype, I'm sure like so many front-end people have wanted to make, where it's like, at first, when you first try the app, there's all these beautiful, fluid, soft animations. But what if as you got more experienced using it, the labels on the buttons dropped and became just icon buttons because you know what they are? The animations become faster because you know where you're going to tap before the animation's even done. And maybe eventually the animations are only happening over 150 milliseconds because you are a power user and you're done with those animations. You're done with this little cute introduction to the application and you're ready to just hammer on things and get things done. So you got to be considerate about those sort of moments. Where is the user in their journey? A really long animation is cute at first, but gets old really fast. Really wild spinning animations can catch an eye, but can also detract from an experience. So yeah, I would try to keep things as like decently quick moving magic paper is a really healthy way to think about things and morph things as opposed to have them swap like a magician. Yeah.
Every metaphor absolutely on point. Thank you for that as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that there's been like Vue Transitions was my favorite when it got launched, and had been like really trying it and making sure that we can have those subtle kind of animations like that just makes you feel more like that. That's like the whole point of user experience. It should like make the user feel at ease, like he is doing something. It's like genuine, natural continuity from something. I do also saw something which is like around super ellipse and shapes like squircle, and like those really just intrigue me. And I also believe that I saw one of your Chromium issues, which was like around how can outlines also support the shape, which is like something which corner shape has done. So would really want to like know that how matching outlines to like corner shape is something that is like more of a UX challenge, and what are the like challenges to match those shapes given that how complex they can be like a super ellipse.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the bug was I was playing with squircles and super ellipses on the corner shape, and when I focused it, the focus outline was following the border radius and not the corner shape. There is a quick fix, which was to set the corners, or no, to set the outline style to solid. I think there's a way that like you can kick it into actually following the shape, but it loses the styles. So it loses the kind of custom color, and it lost the transition that I put on it. Like I like to make my focus outlines, when you focus an element, they kind of expand outward from the element, giving you this little moment of attention and focus. Like it knew that your keyboard entered it and just gave you this nice little delightful moment. And yeah, that was gone when I was prototyping. So I went and logged the bug. The ways to work around that today are with box shadow. Box shadow does continually follow the corner shape and the border radius. And so you can generally recreate almost everything about it, except outline has a very special feature, which is it often will do your outline color request, and then it will pick either white or black as a very subtle, maybe half a pixel complement to ensure contrast on that. So there's a little bit of magic sauce in the outline that you could try to emulate with the box shadow. But yeah, box shadow is your kind of a strong way out of that for today, until we get the browsers to fix this particular bug with outline style not matching the corner radius. But yeah, and then you saw the post I just made like last night. I was looking at a super ellipse. I was looking at a pill shape, and I was like, whoa, this pill looks really good with super ellipse. It's like, it's not quite a squircle. It's not quite the rounded pill like we've had for 25 years. It's something, I just can't tell you how it's different, but gee, I really like it. And so I had to share that. And of course, there's other people who are like, I hate it. It looks weird. It's not a square or a circle. It's something in the middle. I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of why it's fun. But yeah, these are some cool new features in the browser right now.
And I think it's all about the options, right, on that piece. And talking about options and some of those new features, I have to say that there was one thing that broke my brain when it happened, and is when I saw the first if statement on a CSS spreadsheet. You know, when I was looking at it as a CSS sheet, and I saw the first if statement, because I'm being at this point probably thousands of hours seeing things like P5.js and things like that, where I'm used to write things with code. And I always like that part of, before generative art was what it means today, I always like to code art, right? And do from animations to abstract art to fractals, etc. And now you can do a lot of things that you couldn't do before, because there is logic inside your CSS. So I was wondering, how and when do you decide to use logic in CSS versus using logic in JavaScript, right? When you are putting those things kind of together. So yeah, what is your opinion on that CSS logic? When do you continue to write that logic in JavaScript, if anything, or if any time, right? And when do you do it, or do you do it always with that new CSS features that are there? Because for me, yeah, I kind of keep coming back to JS, but I know I'm a creature of habit, right? So on that piece. So maybe it's just because of that. I don't know.
There are clearly times where using JavaScript is better, but sometimes doing it all in CSS is just a fun flex. Sometimes the CSS gets really complex. You see people even like emulating, it's called dry switching with custom properties, emulating an if-else statement using really large calculations, which are kind of old school ways to do if statements in expressions inside of JavaScript. There's a single line if else, just using math type of scenarios. Anytime you're getting tricky, it's fun, but you got to think to yourself, like, where's the limit of this? I made a demo a couple months ago. It was a blooming scroll driven animation. And I'd love to do more of these. I thought it was like really fun to have things kind of like bloom, very flower-like as you scroll them into view. And I did it all in CSS. But if you go look at the CSS to make it responsive, as the browser got smaller, I kind of grabbed each one of them and told them how they needed to angle towards the middle. So it's like, oh, if there's only 4 columns, then the 2 on the far edges need to angle in more than the ones near the middle. And so I was like, it's very handheld. And you could easily use JavaScript to automate something like that. So you could assign these things very dynamic, and it would take this huge chunk of CSS code and make it smaller. There might even be a way to do it with the new trig and math functions to like give these things one definition, and then you have this one really complex math scenario that solves all this for you. But there's this tension. The tension for me is working declaratively first is a quick way to prototype. It's a quick way to get to the finite little details that are going to matter. And then after you've got something that you're really happy with, you're always welcome to go refactor it into something that maybe makes the code more succinct but more tricky. You can go go comment these things in there. But often when I come back to my solutions that are really complex in CSS or JavaScript, I'm like, why did I do this? I don't leave enough breadcrumbs for my decisions. And so maybe one of the best tips is here, whether or not you're doing it in CSS or JS, leave yourself breadcrumbs. Because that night you were up all night, like working on it, like you had all the context in your head. But next month, you might not have that context. Do yourself and other people a favor. Just comment the snot out of that document and let people know what you were doing.
Victor,
yeah, I think
Victor
sometimes
from the past is my worst team member by far. I can tell you, my past me is my worst team member.
All the code I've ever
time.
written over 6 months ago stinks. It's so funny how I'm like, ooh, this is really good, and then 6 months later, I'm like, maybe you're that much better, or maybe you just have new opinions, or maybe you're just reflecting on
you
things
evolve,
differently.
right? Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah, you
definitely. Right.
evolve.
It's funny, right? Because I thought with years of experience that feeling would disappear, but it continues to happen. Every 3 to 6 months, I look at it and I was like, what were you thinking? Why you do it that way? It keeps happening. It keeps happening.
It's growth. You're just growing. Stop growing, Victor, and then you'll stop feeling that way.
Could be.
Amazing. Yeah. I believe that CSS has come a long way with if and functions. I was really excited to use those, and maybe even containers. So there was a case where we were just using resize observe, and I was like, why were you using that? And just change it with CSS container and made sure that, yeah, it still just works out of the box. I do want to know, there is something with the future of web UI, how it is growing, and how CSS is becoming all powerful, the almighty, which is would be replacing JavaScript. I do not know. Maybe complementing JavaScript. Yeah, more rather like that. So yeah, what upcoming CSS or web UI platform features do you think would change how the way that engineers, could be software UX engineers, work, and maybe something that would ease their jobs at their work?
Yeah. I have a lot of fun, easy answers for this one. So at lots of my research when I was on Chrome was interviewing teams and what they were struggling with. And scroll interactions was a big one. You saw a lot of people reaching for JavaScript for sticky. And you're like, hey, don't you know CSS sticky is there? It's been there for a while. And they're like, no, I don't even know what that is. But then you give them sticky and they go, all right, cool. Now how do I add the shadow when it sticks? And you're like, oh man, you do need JavaScript for that still, but not anymore. So now we have scroll state queries. And so this is sort of those moments that CSS is just like, oh, I didn't know you needed that when we spec'd it originally. Let me add this feature. Let me do more work declaratively so that you don't have to watch this hyper event as the scroll is happening or as the resize is happening. These are such chatty APIs that give you all this information every tick. And you're just like, that's a lot of information. So the browser can do a lot less work, letting you do it declaratively, and then they can do that loop themselves under the hood and optimize that. And so scroll state queries are opening up all sorts of things for knowing whether an item is snapped or not, for knowing if something is stuck or not, for knowing which direction the user is scrolling. That's a huge one. You see these top navs that go away as you scroll down to give you the full screen experience. But as you scroll back up, they bring in controls again. You can now do that from CSS. There was one more, which was, stuck. Anyway, so stuck is one, so you know if something is stuck. All of these little moments where scroll is now a declarative stateful thing that you can just like a container query instead of asking for the size. Oh, the other one I didn't mention was overflowing. Is there even a scroll bar present? You don't have to write a JavaScript function to check that anymore. You can just ask the container, do you have a scroll bar? Are you overflowing? If you are, I would like to adapt myself to, well, in this case, it's like add the little arrow that scrolls someone to the bottom, or add the little arrow that scrolls them to the top. You don't want that thing to be visible if there is nowhere to even scroll.
Yeah.
But those are like a few of like just scroll interactions that I found at Shopify. They've recreated so many of these. I'm going through the application. There's custom sticky stuff all over the place, custom scroll snap stuff. And I'm excited to kind of help these things move out of these chatty, often layout thrashing JavaScript implementations into a CSS one. So yeah, check out scroll state. Those are a really good way to get rid of JavaScript and do it all in CSS. And then yeah, starting style is another one. People used to use JavaScript a lot to introduce an element. Even though keyframes has been able to do it for like 20 years, keyframes had to be placed forwards on the playhead, and then it would hold the styles there, which made, and keyframes have a very strong set of specificity. And so it didn't feel very viable unless JavaScript removed the class after it. Anyway, it's a little sticky. Anyway, at starting styles, removing JavaScript there too. Scroll-driven animations, removing all sorts of JavaScript. JavaScript that runs on the main thread. Now these CSS animations run off the main thread, all through a nice browser API. So it's like wins across the board as CSS takes more of this stuff. But a lot of people are like, CSS is getting more complex. And I think really it's just the things that it's doing aren't necessarily more complex, but the surface area of the language is growing, and that just makes it harder to wrap your head around. So I empathize that these things can feel overwhelming, but it's just like new words being added to a dictionary. You're like, I didn't need that new word. I was able to talk to people, and then the new word shows up, and you're like, I just used it in a sentence the other day, and it actually worked out pretty good. So I think CSS is in a similar state as something like that.
That's exciting for sure. That's exciting for sure. So I know that Yash has kind of a very quick section that he wants to introduce after that, but I would like to ask you last questions before you do. And it's the following, right? I love tooling, and again, I believe that frameworks well used, and you mentioned Svelte, right? Which is probably, it would be as well my recommendation if I had to pick one. I was wondering if you use something after you write the CSS, right? Because obviously frameworks is when you type it, but when you are done, right? So but obviously there is plenty of post CSS processors. You have bundlers like Webpack, etc. So tell me a bit about how your process looks after you finish writing that CSS. How do you usually, ship it to the web in a production ready professional way?
Nice. Yeah, I've gone through many phases of
Same.
these sort of like transformations and what tools I would use. So originally it was like Compass and Sass, and I would just let Sass do a lot of the work. It would have a minifier and a bundler, so you're taking all your imports and putting them into one file, which is still the best practice. And then I went through a phase of writing, or just implementing my own post CSS plugins, which I still do on my personal website. And those are things like, I want the nesting to stay. So I don't compile nesting away, but that's a choice that you can make during your tooling state or tooling transform. Do you want to keep nesting or get rid of it? How strong are you trying to minify colors? Like that's something I just did at Shopify, where they were using the RGBA syntax and commas between all of their values, which is like the longest way to write the color. And so I just wrote a simple post CSS plugin that looked at the color and created the RGB version, and created the 3 syntax, or the 3 value hex syntax if possible, or the 4. If there was alpha, you can do FFF3 or something like that and do like a semi-transparent white. And so there's like optimizations like that, that's sort of like you let the computer do these crunches. Those can be really cool. Some of them get a little heavy-handed. Like I don't like the ones that rearrange or reorder. And then you have like really modern ones that I've tried multiple times, and I want to like it more, like Lightning CSS, which has a lot of really good habits built in it. Oh, there's also post CSS preset env, which was a very modern, like pre-made set of post CSS plugins that would let you write modern CSS but output good old CSS. That's still a valid one, and I think Vite uses that under the hood by default when you're using when you're importing CSS through it. So, but then there's Lightning. Lightning is faster. Lightning has what do they call it? Down. It's not downsampling. What is it called? Anyway, they'll take your modern stuff and they'll output something that works in older browsers and has a lot of really aggressive optimizations. And aggressive it can be really good, but there's times where like I'm opinionated on what I want to be output, or I'm even leveraging a CSS trick where I'm like, hey, I wrote those 3 colors as a hex color and then a display P3 color and then an OKLCH color. I put those 3 there on purpose. I wanted the browser to pick whichever one it was capable of using in that sequence. And it would be like, hey, I've done you a favor and optimized your colors. You had a repetition of colors. I'm like, no, that was very intentional. So you got to kind of give and take between all these tools. Some of them overreach, some of them underreach, like Post CSS just out of the box doesn't do very much. You have to go grab various plugins and add to it yourself. Post CSS preset env, I used to use that one all the time, but then I started disabling plugins over time where my config became dominated by stop doing that. So tooling is just kind of funny this way. It's going to evolve as you evolve. You got to find out what your browser targets are. There's plenty of tools that'll tell you if you're using a CSS property that's outside of a browser feature, given your target support that you're looking for. And it's a dance. You got to be willing to step in there, put your dancing shoes on, do a couple twirls, maybe trip. Maybe you trip on them. I don't know, pick them up, do some more twirls, and just keep that dance going until you find yourselves in a nice harmony. And a lot of that comes with iteration, team-based discussions, style lints and linters, and just what your expected output is. And maybe even outputting things like a critical CSS file that loads just in the head tag. That way you get a faster initial paint and you can lazy load the rest of your bundle. Using cascade layers to allow for a more asynchronous loading scenario, but still having a very strict hold on the way that the cascade applies. There's so many fun and different ways to architect these days, from bundling and tooling, which is also why sometimes people pick a framework. Is they're like, hi, framework like Astro, would you just do this all for me? I don't want to study cascade layers and Post CSS and Lightning CSS just to make a bundle.
Yeah, I mean,
I would just
sometimes
like a bundle,
getting
please.
something opinionated, right, and someone put the fences for you. Sometimes I see the appeal, right, on those things, and I really like that you mentioned something that I do myself. I find myself doing a lot, and it's that piece of
Dancing with your compiler?
Dancing, of course, yes, definitely, but not only dancing, but I really like that idea of caring how your kind of post-process CSS looks like, right? Especially when I write examples and I do website, I like that people right-click inspect element and my CSS still looks like my CSS, when they are looking into it, because sometimes it is really hard to see where that CSS came from. And obviously, any examples that I do always come with a GitHub repo, but sometimes I have the pleasure, of being able to show it, right-click, inspect element, and you can clearly see what I wrote and not whatever the tool decided to output on the other side, which is sometimes extremely different, right, as well. But of course, that efficiency, readability, you ship for different reasons when you are kind of in a conference versus in a tool like that. But yeah, so Yash, I believe that you have a fun section onwards.
But I believe that this just reminded me of a video that Adam Argyle did quite a bit ago, which was like just installing the tooling, and it was like the whole day was just about installing tooling. Maybe we can just put it in the description. I'm just remembering
For sure.
that it just goes like you're just.
Oh yeah, that was a joke. Yeah, that with Jason Langsdorff. I love that bit where we just npm installed all day and actually did nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, maybe that can just appear out of nowhere in this video. So yeah, that looking forward to that. But yeah, I do have a game right now, which is like called This or That, which is like, it is more of a rapid fire thing, but you can just feel free to take your time as well. You'll be just imagining that one of these cutting CSS that you have really loved and were dear to you would just stay forever, and the other would just blink and disappear. Like it wouldn't just exist. So it would
I
be
choose
like
grid over Flexbox already. Yep.
yeah. So it is like, which one do you choose? So yeah, we will just start it. And here's the first one. It is like functions versus inline if. Which one do you think that should stay?
Oh wait, what is it again?
It's functions or inline if.
Oh, functions or inline if. Oh man, functions all day.
Amazing,
All
amazing.
right.
So yeah, next, it's view transitions versus scroll driven animations.
Oh,
No.
I'm going to choose view transitions.
All right.
So yeah, the next one is property versus the new attr. So the new supported type attribute values.
Ooh, app property versus adder.
It's ad property versus adder.
Oh man, these are good ones. That's unfair. I think I would choose adder, ATTR. That's just it's too good.
Amazing. So it's like this one is a bit hard as well. So it is like CSS nesting versus interpolate sizing.
Hmm. So interpolate size, allow keywords is what you're referencing, right? So the ability to like animate height and auto and min content mac.
Yeah.
Nesting is very nice. It's like one helps me day to day, and then one unlocks a feature. I'm gonna choose nesting.
Amazing. The next one is like layers versus container style queries. So cascade layers or at layer versus container style.
Ooh, that I do love cascade layers a lot, but they're very architecture driven, and style queries are a little bit more utilitarian. So I'm gonna choose style queries.
Amazing. Yeah. So I believe that this one was more like for us it was a game, but I feel this was like life or death for you, the way it was too difficult for you to choose. But yeah,
But
I
it shows you how much he
It's
loved
tough.
each one of the features, because you could see him suffering on that bit. So it shows you how much he loved it. So, and hopefully, if you are on the audience right now, you heard some of those and you don't know what they are. You need to know that Adam was suffering on which one to kill. So probably if any of the things that we mentioned you haven't heard before, this is a great time to Google them, right, and learn about them, because these are all extremely hard questions that Yash prepared to pick one of anything on this list. It was designed to torture. So I'm really sorry, Adam, that we made this for you. But you were an absolute champ as we went. We always plan for these episodes to be, anywhere between 25 and 30 minutes. It has been now more than 40, and it shows, how hard it is to bring these very interesting people and then try to keep them, to 25 or 30. It's usually almost impossible to do, but it's been a pleasure, Adam, to have the time together today. Something that we always ask at the end is where do we know more about you? Do you have a blog, social networks? Where do we continue to learn more about Adam, and where can our audience contact you?
Yeah, find me on nerdy.dev, nerdy.dev, and this has been really fun. Thanks for inviting me on, y'all. This is great.
Same over here.
amazing. Yeah, time flies by and we learned so much today. So yeah, it was just a pleasure having you. So I believe Victor has some end notes. So yeah, really looking forward.
Absolutely. Continue to follow us on YouTube once these episodes continue to drop. Thank you for tuning in for this UX show. I believe we continue to bring excellent, friends from the industry, and you can expect more very soon. So thank you, everyone, and have a good day. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Yash.
See ya.
Bye.